The Dominator shuddered again as explosions rippled through its weapon systems. Commander Vrek dragged Lyra toward the escape pods, keeping his plasma rifle pressed against her back. "You've doomed this ship," he snarled, "but I won't let you escape." Lyra stumbled forward, buying time with each step. Her sabotage had worked better than expected. The ship's systems were failing rapidly, cascading from the weapons array into other critical components. "The Empire will hunt you forever for this," Vrek threatened. Lyra felt no fear now. Some things are worth being hunted for. They reached the escape pod chamber. Vrek shoved her inside the nearest pod and followed, sealing the door behind them. As he turned to the control panel, Lyra closed her eyes and concentrated. With her collar gone, her empathic abilities flowed freely. She pushed into Vrek's mind, not to read his emotions, but to amplify them. His anger, his fear, his hatred. She magnified them until they overwhelmed his senses. Vrek clutched his head, roaring in pain. "What are you doing to me?" "Showing you what it feels like," Lyra said quietly, "to be chained." Meanwhile, Jack led the humans through another explosion-rocked corridor. They had changed their plan, heading for the emergency evacuation area instead of the main hangar. Lyra must be near the escape pods, Jack told Captain Gardner as they ran. That's where Vrek would go if the ship was failing. Ellen nodded grimly. "And that's where we're going to." They rounded the corner to find the escape pod chamber. Through the viewport of the nearest pod, they could see Lyra confronting Vrek. The Xathian commander was on his knees, his weapons forgotten as he clutched his head. "We need to get that door open," Jack said, rushing to the external controls. Inside the pod, Vrek fought through the mental assault. With a desperate lunge, he grabbed Lyra's leg, pulling her down. They struggled on the floor of the pod, Vrek's superior strength giving him the advantage. "You forget," he growled, pinning her down. "Xathians evolved from predators. Our minds are stronger than you think." His clawed hand closed around her throat. Lyra gasped for air, her concentration breaking. Suddenly, the pod door slid open. Jack stood in the doorway, a stolen Xathian weapon in his hands. "Let her go," he ordered. Vrek spun around, using Lyra as a shield. "The engineer. I should have killed you when we found your ship." Jack didn't lower his weapon. "It's over. Vrek, your ship is breaking apart. Your crew is evacuating. Let her go, and you can leave in this pod." Vrek laughed harshly. "You think I fear death more than failure. The Empire does not tolerate commanders who lose their ships." In one swift motion, he threw Lyra aside and lunged at Jack. The human fired, but Vrek moved with unexpected speed. The blast caught him in the shoulder instead of the chest. Wounded but still dangerous, the commander slammed into Jack, sending them both crashing against the wall. Lyra struggled to her feet as the two fought. She saw Jack's weapon skitter across the floor. Vrek had Jack pinned now, his clawed hand raised for a killing blow. With all her remaining strength, Lyra projected not anger or fear, but calmness, a wave of peace so powerful that it momentarily stunned everyone in the pod. In that moment of stillness, she grabbed the fallen weapon and fired. Vrek collapsed to the floor, his yellow eyes wide with shock. "Impossible," he whispered as the light faded from his eyes. Jack staggered to Lyra's side. "Are you hurt?" Before she could answer, Captain Gardner appeared at the door. "We need to go. Now. The ship's core is destabilizing." They left Vrek's body in the pod and raced to join the rest of the humans. Together, they secured enough evacuation vessels for everyone. As they launched away from the Dominator, the massive warship exploded in a brilliant flash that lit up the darkness of space. From the viewport of their escape craft, Lyra watched the ship that had been her prison disintegrate. Jack stood beside her, his hand gently touching hers. "Where will you go now?" he asked. Lyra looked at the stars, the same stars that had once seemed like distant, unreachable points of light from her cell. Now they represented possibility. "Home," she said, and then, everywhere. Joe Miller checked his ship's scanner again. The small distress signal was still blinking on his screen. It was weak, probably an old emergency beacon, but still working. Joe hadn't planned to stop at Nexus 9. The Federation had marked this planet as dangerous, but he wasn't one to ignore someone in trouble. Just a quick look, he told himself as he guided his ship, the Drifter, down through the pink clouds. Find the beacon, check for survivors, then leave. The Drifter was small but reliable. Joe had bought it with money saved from 5 years of hard work in the mines of Ceres. It wasn't much, but it was his, and it gave him the freedom to go where he wanted. As a human, he was often looked down on by Federation citizens who saw his species as primitive newcomers to space travel. Joe landed in a small clearing and checked his gun. The reports said the native creatures were hostile, but he had learned not to trust everything the Federation claimed. He tucked a medical kit into his belt just in case and stepped out onto the purple grass. The beacon signal led him through thick trees and across a small stream. As he got closer, he heard strange clicking sounds ahead. Joe moved carefully, staying low and quiet. He reached the edge of a small clearing and stopped in surprise. A woman lay on the ground, clearly sick or injured. Around her stood 5 tall, thin creatures with shimmering skin. They were the Void Walkers he had been warned about. But they weren't attacking her. They were protecting her. One was placing a damp cloth on her head, while another held off a large predator with a makeshift spear. Joe took a deep breath and stepped into the clearing. The Void Walkers turned to him, their skin flashing with bright colors. The tallest one moved in front of the woman. "I'm not here to hurt anyone," Joe said, slowly putting his gun back in its holster. He held up his hands to show they were empty. "I picked up a distress signal. I'm here to help." He pulled out his universal translator and switched it on. It couldn't fully translate the Void Walker's language yet, but it might help them understand his intentions. "Friend," he said clearly into the device. "Help. Medicine." He pointed to the woman on the ground. The Void Walker's colors shifted to softer blues and greens. The tall one stepped aside, allowing Joe to approach the woman. She was young, probably in her 20s, with the uniform of a Federation scientist. Her skin was hot with fever, and her breathing was shallow. Federation left her. The translator picked up from the Void Walker's clicks and color changes. "We protect." Joe nodded. "I'll help her," he said. "May I take her to my ship? I have better medicine there." The Void Walkers seemed to discuss among themselves, their skin rippling with patterns. Finally, the tall one nodded. "We trust," the translator said. "Help her." Joe carefully lifted the woman. She was light in his arms, weakened by illness. The Void Walkers followed as he carried her back to his ship. They watched with curious eyes as the Drifter's door opened. Inside the ship, Joe placed her on his small medical bed. His scanner showed she was having a severe allergic reaction to something she had eaten. He quickly prepared an injection that would reduce the swelling and help her body fight the toxin. As the medicine entered her system, her breathing became easier. Color returned to her pale face. Joe wiped her forehead with a cool cloth and waited. The woman's eyes fluttered open. They were a deep brown, filled with confusion as they focused on Joe. "Who?" she whispered, her voice weak. "I'm Joe Miller," he said with a small smile. "I'm a human trader. I found you with the Void Walkers." "You're human?" she asked, surprise clear in her voice. "But how? Why would a human help me?" "Why wouldn't I?" Joe replied simply. "You needed help. That's all that matters to me." She closed her eyes, a tear sliding down her cheek. "My own people left me to die," she whispered. "And I was saved by those I was taught to fear. And now by a human." "What's your name?" Joe asked gently. "Amara," she said. "Amara Zev." Outside the ship, the Void Walkers waited patiently, their skin glowing softly in the gathering darkness. Joe Miller checked his ship's scanner again. The small distress signal was still blinking on his screen. It was weak, probably an old emergency beacon, but still working. Joe hadn't planned to stop at Nexus 9. The Federation had marked this planet as dangerous, but he wasn't one to ignore someone in trouble. Just a quick look, he told himself as he guided his ship, the Drifter, down through the pink clouds. Find the beacon, check for survivors, then leave. The Drifter was small but reliable. Joe had bought it with money saved from 5 years of hard work in the mines of Ceres. It wasn't much, but it was his, and it gave him the freedom to go where he wanted. As a human, he was often looked down on by Federation citizens who saw his species as primitive newcomers to space travel. Joe landed in a small clearing and checked his gun. The reports said the native creatures were hostile, but he had learned not to trust everything the Federation claimed. He tucked a medical kit into his belt just in case and stepped out onto the purple grass. The beacon signal led him through thick trees and across a small stream. As he got closer, he heard strange clicking sounds ahead. Joe moved carefully, staying low and quiet. He reached the edge of a small clearing and stopped in surprise. A woman lay on the ground, clearly sick or injured. Around her stood 5 tall, thin creatures with shimmering skin. They were the Void Walkers he had been warned about. But they weren't attacking her. They were protecting her. One was placing a damp cloth on her head, while another held off a large predator with a makeshift spear. Joe took a deep breath and stepped into the clearing. The Void Walkers turned to him, their skin flashing with bright colors. The tallest one moved in front of the woman. "I'm not here to hurt anyone," Joe said, slowly putting his gun back in its holster. He held up his hands to show they were empty. "I picked up a distress signal. I'm here to help." He pulled out his universal translator and switched it on. It couldn't fully translate the Void Walkers' language yet, but it might help them understand his intentions. "Friend," he said clearly into the device. "Help. Medicine." He pointed to the woman on the ground. The Void Walkers' colors shifted to softer blues and greens. The tall one stepped aside, allowing Joe to approach the woman. She was young, probably in her 20s, with the uniform of a Federation scientist. Her skin was hot with fever, and her breathing was shallow. Federation left her. The translator picked up from the Void Walker's clicks and color changes. "We protect." Joe nodded. "I'll help her," he said. "May I take her to my ship? I have better medicine there." The Void Walkers seemed to discuss among themselves, their skin rippling with patterns. Finally, the tall one nodded. "We trust," the translator said. "Help her." Joe carefully lifted the woman. She was light in his arms, weakened by illness. The Void Walkers followed as he carried her back to his ship. They watched with curious eyes as the Drifter's door opened. Inside the ship, Joe placed her on his small medical bed. His scanner showed she was having a severe allergic reaction to something she had eaten. He quickly prepared an injection that would reduce the swelling and help her body fight the toxin. As the medicine entered her system, her breathing became easier. Color returned to her pale face. Joe wiped her forehead with a cool cloth and waited. The woman's eyes fluttered open. They were a deep brown, filled with confusion as they focused on Joe. "Who?" she whispered, her voice weak. "I'm Joe Miller," he said with a small smile. "I'm a human trader. I found you with the Void Walkers." "You're human?" she asked, surprise clear in her voice. "But how? Why would a human help me?" "Why wouldn't I?" Joe replied simply. "You needed help. That's all that matters to me." She closed her eyes, a tear sliding down her cheek. "My own people left me to die," she whispered. "And I was saved by those I was taught to fear. And now, by a human." "What's your name?" Joe asked gently. "Amara," she said. "Amara Zev." Outside the ship, the Void Walkers waited patiently, their skin glowing softly in the gathering darkness. Amara sat wrapped in a blanket in the small kitchen area of Joe's ship. Her hand shook slightly as she held a cup of hot tea. It had been 2 days since Joe had found her, and her strength was slowly returning. "Why were you alone on Nexus 9? Joe asked as he prepared a simple meal. Federation scientists usually travel in teams. Amara's eyes dropped to her cup. I wasn't alone at first. My team, they left me there. Left you. Joe stopped what he was doing. On purpose. Amara nodded. I found something they didn't want anyone to know. She pulled out the small data drive from her pocket. She had kept it hidden in her boot. The Void Walkers aren't the mindless monsters the Federation claims. They're intelligent, with their own culture and language. Joe didn't seem surprised. I figured as much when I saw them caring for you. But why would the Federation lie about them? Amara asked. Joe sat down across from her with a sigh. Resources. Nexus 9 is rich in quantum crystals. The Federation wants them for their new warp engines, but their own laws prevent them from taking inhabited worlds from intelligent species. So they claim the Void Walkers are just animals, Amara whispered. That's horrible. I've seen it before, Joe said, his voice turning hard. I used to be a Federation pilot. 5 years ago, I was ordered to bomb a village on Terran 4. They told us it was empty, just a nest of dangerous creatures. But when I flew over, he closed his eyes, the memory still painful. I saw children playing. Families, not monsters. What did you do? Amara asked. I refused the order. Dropped my bombs in the ocean instead. Then I deserted. Been on the run ever since, trading goods between the outer worlds. Joe looked up at her. The Federation isn't evil, Amara. Most people in it are good, but some leaders will do anything for power and resources. Amara thought about Commander Voss and Director Krell. Had they been following orders from higher up, or were they making these decisions themselves? We need to show everyone the truth, she said. My research proves the Void Walkers are intelligent. If we could establish proper communication with them, it would be dangerous, Joe interrupted. The Federation has marked you as dead. If they find out you're alive and have this evidence, I can't just do nothing, Amara insisted. Those beings saved my life. They protected me even though I'm not one of them. I owe them the same. Joe studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, but we do this carefully. First, we need better proof. Your notes are a start, but we need clear evidence of their intelligence that no one can deny. We need to go back down there, Amara said, setting down her cup. I need to finish my research. You're still weak, Joe pointed out, and we'll need protection against whatever made you sick. I can identify the plants now, Amara said, and I have my partial research on their communication patterns. With your translator, we might be able to actually talk with them. Joe thought for a moment, then smiled. I've got some protective gear in storage. Not Federation quality, but it should help. Why are you helping me? Amara asked suddenly. This puts you at risk too. Joe shrugged. Maybe I'm tired of running. Or maybe I just think doing the right thing matters more than being safe. The next morning, they prepared to return to the surface. Joe packed supplies while Amara reviewed her notes. The Federation thinks the Void Walkers are monsters, she said as they suited up. And they thought you, as a human, were too primitive to matter. Seems like they're wrong about a lot of things. Joe grinned. That's the nice thing about being underestimated. People never see you coming. Outside the ship, the Void Walkers were waiting. They had never left, keeping watch through the night. When Amara stepped out, the tall one's skin glowed with warm orange colors that the translator roughly interpreted as "Welcome back, friend." For the next week, Amara and Joe worked together on the surface of Nexus 9. With Joe's help, Amara set up a proper research camp. This time, she had the right equipment to stay safe from the planet's toxic plants and insects. The Void Walkers visited every day. At first, they were careful around Joe, their skin showing patterns of caution in yellow and pale blue. But soon they accepted him just as they had Amara. Look at this, Amara said one morning, pointing to her datapad. Their color patterns aren't random. They're a language. Joe leaned over her shoulder. On the screen was a chart showing different color combinations and their possible meanings. "So the blue-green ripple means friend?" he asked. Amara nodded. "And the sharp red flash is a warning. I think with more time, we could build a full dictionary." Joe adjusted his translator. "Let's try something simple." He faced the tall Void Walker, who they had started calling Elder because the others seemed to respect it. Joe's skin couldn't change color, so he used the translator to create light patterns similar to those of the Void Walkers. "Friend," Joe said as the translator flashed blue-green. The Elder's skin rippled with the same pattern, then added a soft purple glow. The translator gave a rough meaning. "Friend, welcome." Amara gasped. It worked. "Joe, we're actually talking to them." Over the next few days, their communication improved. They learned that the Void Walkers called themselves the Lumina. They had lived on Nexus 9 for thousands of years. The planet wasn't just their home. They were connected to it in ways Amara's science couldn't fully explain. One young Lumina seemed especially curious about the visitors. It often brought Amara interesting rocks or plants, its skin glowing with excited colors. Amara named it Echo, because it liked to copy her movements and words. "Echo likes you," Joe said as he watched them together. Amara smiled. "I like Echo too. It's amazing how quickly it learns." Through Echo, they discovered the real reason the Lumina had been hostile to the first Federation explorers. The Federation had started mining operations without permission, destroying a sacred grove of trees that the Lumina needed for their coming-of-age rituals. They weren't attacking without reason, Amara said as she recorded this new information. They were defending their home. "Just like I thought," Joe said. The Federation report left out that part. As they worked, Amara noticed how Joe never complained about the long hours or difficult conditions. He was patient with the Lumina and respectful of their ways. It was different from how her Federation colleagues had acted, always in a rush, seeing the planet as a resource to be used rather than a world to be understood. "Joe," she said one evening as they sat by their campfire, "thank you for helping me. I don't think I could have done this alone." Joe smiled. "You're doing the hard part, the science, the communication. That's all you. I'm just the driver." "No," Amara shook her head. "You're much more than that. You saw the truth when my own people couldn't, or wouldn't." Their eyes met across the fire. Something new passed between them, a connection deeper than just two colleagues working together. The moment was interrupted by Echo, who rushed into the camp with skin flashing alarming reds and oranges. "Danger," the translator interpreted. "Sky machines coming." Joe jumped up and grabbed his scanner. "Federation ships," he confirmed, his face grim. "At least 3 of them entering orbit." Amara felt cold fear grip her heart. "They're coming to finish what they started." "Then we better move fast," Joe said, already packing up their most important equipment. "We have everything we need to prove the Lumina are intelligent. Now we just need to make the Federation listen." As they hurried to prepare, Amara looked at Echo and the other Lumina. Their skin showed worry, but also trust. Trust in her and Joe to protect them. She wouldn't let them down. Joe's ship flew fast through the pink clouds of Nexus 9. Amara sat beside him in the co-pilot's seat, nervously watching the radar. 3 large Federation ships were moving into position above the planet. "What are they doing?" she asked, pointing to the screen. Joe's face was grim. "Standard formation for a cleansing operation. They're preparing to send down troops and heavy equipment." Amara felt sick. "They're going to wipe out the Lumina." "Not if we stop them," Joe said firmly. He opened a communication channel. "This is independent trader Joe Miller requesting to speak with the Federation Command." The screen remained blank for a long moment. Then Commander Voss's face appeared. Her cold eyes widened in surprise when she saw Amara. Well, Voss said. "Our lost scientist is alive after all, and in the company of a human deserter." "How interesting." "Commander Voss," Amara said, trying to keep her voice steady, "you need to stop this operation immediately. The Void Walkers, the beings you call monsters, are an intelligent species with their own language and culture. Voss laughed. We've heard this nonsense before. Your mental state was already questionable when we left you, Zev. Now you've clearly gone native. Or perhaps the human has filled your head with his primitive ideas. We have proof. Joe cut in. Research, recordings, a working translation system. And I suppose you expect us to just take your word for it? Voss asked. A deserter and a scientist who failed her mission. I didn't fail my mission, Amara said angrily. I completed it. The Lumina are intelligent beings, and under Federation law, their world is protected. You know that. That's why you left me behind when I found the truth. Voss's smile disappeared. You have 1 hour to leave this system, Miller. After that, your ship will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly. As for you, Zev, you're officially listed as dead. That status can become reality if necessary. The screen went dark. She's not going to listen, Amara said, her hands shaking. What do we do now? Joe was already turning the ship. We have one chance. The Federation Council doesn't know what's happening here. The mining operation is probably authorized by just a few corrupt officials. If we can broadcast the truth to all Federation worlds. But how? Amara asked. Our communication system isn't powerful enough. No, Joe agreed. But the Federation command ship's system is. Amara stared at him. You want to board a Federation command ship? That's impossible. Not completely, Joe said with a small smile. I was a Federation pilot, remember? I know their security protocols, their ship layouts, and I still have my old access codes. They might have deactivated them, but it's worth a try. It's too dangerous, Amara protested. They'll shoot you on sight. Do you have a better idea? Joe asked gently. Amara looked down at her datapad, at the images of the Lumina, at Echo's friendly face. These beings had protected her when she was abandoned. Now it was her turn to protect them. I'm coming with you, she said firmly. Joe shook his head. No, someone needs to warn the Lumina, get them to safety if we fail. That has to be you. They trust you. Amara knew he was right, but the thought of Joe facing the Federation alone filled her with fear. Joe, she began, not sure what to say. He reached over and took her hand. I'll be okay. I'm pretty good at staying alive. The moment stretched between them, full of words unsaid. Then Joe leaned forward and kissed her gently. It lasted only a second, but it felt like a promise. For luck, he said with a smile. They landed the drifter in a hidden valley. Amara prepared to head back to the Lumina village, while Joe readied a small shuttle he had kept hidden in the cargo bay. I've prepared a data package with all our research, Amara said, handing him a small drive. If you can get this into the Federation network, everyone will see the truth. I will, Joe promised. And then I'll come back for you. As his shuttle lifted off toward the Federation fleet, Amara watched until it was just a tiny dot in the pink sky. Then she turned and ran toward the village. There wasn't much time. Amara ran through the forest, her heart pounding. She had to reach the Lumina village before the Federation troops arrived. Echo met her halfway, its skin flashing worried yellows and reds. Danger coming, Amara said, using both words and the light patterns they had developed. Bad people from the sky. The elder appeared with several other Lumina. Their skin showed they understood the danger. The elder's colors asked a question. What should they do? Hide, Amara suggested. Go to the caves. But the elder's skin flashed a firm negative. The Lumina would not abandon their home. They had lived on this land for countless generations. They would protect it. Amara thought quickly. Then we need to show them you are intelligent, that you are people, not monsters. Meanwhile, Joe's small shuttle approached the Federation command ship. His hands were steady on the controls, but his mind raced. He had one chance to get this right. Federation Command, this is shuttle pilot Joe Miller requesting emergency docking, he said into the communicator. Engine malfunction. Need immediate assistance. There was a pause, then a response. Shuttle identified. Emergency docking bay opening. Stand by for security team. Joe smiled grimly. Step 1 complete. Now for the hard part. When the shuttle docked, 4 armed guards were waiting. Joe raised his hands in surrender. "I need to speak with your commander," he said. "I have important information about the operation on Nexus 9. The guards escorted him to a holding cell instead. Joe didn't resist. He knew the ship's layout. The cell block was close to the main communication center, exactly where he needed to go. Once alone, Joe pulled a small device from his boot. It was an old Federation override key he had kept from his days as a pilot. He placed it against the cell door lock and prayed it still worked. The lock clicked open. In the village, Amara and the Lumina worked together on a desperate plan. The Elder had shown her a special crystal that glowed with an intense light when the Lumina touched it. If enough crystals were arranged in a pattern, they could create a signal visible from space. "Here," Amara said, drawing a simple design on the ground. It was the universal symbol for peace, recognized throughout the galaxy. "Make this with the crystals." As Federation ships began to descend through the atmosphere, Amara's communicator beeped. It was a message from Joe. "I'm in." His voice came through, breathless and excited. "Accessing the main communication system now. Get ready." On the command ship, Joe had reached the communication center. 2 technicians tried to stop him, but years of survival on the edge of space had made Joe quick and strong. He locked them in a storage room and turned to the main control panel. He inserted Amara's data drive and began the upload to the Federation's public network. Images of the Lumina, recordings of their language, evidence of their intelligence, all of it streaming to every Federation world. "Stop right there." Commander Voss appeared at the door, weapon raised. "You're too late, Miller. The operation has already begun." "Look at the screen, Commander," Joe said calmly. "It's already done." On the main display, messages were pouring in from Federation planets. Citizens watching the evidence in real time. Government officials demanding answers. Calls to stop the attack. On the surface, Amara watched as the Federation ships suddenly stopped their descent. The massive peace symbol created by the Lumina's glowing crystals shone brightly against the purple grass, visible to anyone watching from above. Her communicator beeped again. "Amara." Joe's voice came through. "Are you there?" "I'm here," she answered, tears of relief in her eyes. "What's happening?" "The Federation Council has ordered all ships to stand down," Joe said. "They're launching an investigation into Voss and her superiors." "We did it." 3 days later, Joe's ship landed in the center of the Lumina village. When he stepped out, Amara ran to him and threw her arms around him. "You came back," she whispered. "I promised I would," he replied, holding her close. Around them, the Lumina's skin glowed with beautiful patterns of blue, green, and purple, colors of joy and celebration. Echo danced around them, its young skin flashing the newly learned pattern for happy ending. Amara looked up at Joe, then at the Lumina who had saved her life, then back at the human who had risked everything to help her save them. "What happens now?" she asked. Joe smiled. "Now we help the Federation learn the truth about the Lumina, and maybe about humans too." As the pink sun set on Nexus 9, Amara realized she had found something she never expected when she first came to this planet. A new home, with friends who weren't monsters, and a human who had shown her what true humanity meant.